Mr. Bakori is a very poor carpenter who lived in Amahu village. He has 3 children, Saida his first daughter, Aziza his second daughter and his only son Akida who is lying critically sick in the hospital. Mr. and Mrs. Bakori just got back from the hospital. They sat in their living room looking very sad. Where do we get 250,000 for these hospital bills? Mrs. Bakori said to her husband who sat there quietly, looking very confused. Mr. Bakori is a poor carpenter. He spent all his savings many years ago treating his mother, who was very sick at the time, but after all he did, his mother died. Since then, Mr. Bakori has not bounced back. He barely has enough money to take care of his wife and 3 children, and now his only son needed money for an operation that will cost 250,000. As they sat there thinking what to do, there was a knock at the door. "Come in," Mrs. Bakori said in a sad voice, but to their surprise, it was a middle-aged man in his late 40s, looking very rich. His perfume filled the small living room, making Mr. and Mrs. Bakori confused, wondering why such a rich man will show up in their home, seeing that the man is a very wealthy man. "How may we help you, sir?" Mr. Bakori said, questions written all over his face. The man smiled and said, "My name is Mr. Juma. I am from the neighboring village. I have come to marry your daughter and wipe shame off the face of your family." Mr. and Mrs. Bakori looked surprised. "Oh yes, you are welcome," Mrs. Bakori shouted. "Please have your seat, sir." It was obvious his wealth could change their family crisis overnight, but Mr. Bakori wasn't sure about him. He has heard rumors about Mr. Juma, who already has about 7 wives. 4 of his wives died mysteriously and the other 3 lived overseas. "If you will give me your daughter's hand in marriage, I will give you any amount of money you need and set up a proper furniture company for you. By this time next week, you will become a millionaire." Mr. Bakori and his wife were not people who were after material things, but they know they need to save their only son's life, who was lying helplessly in the hospital. Later that night, Mr. and Mrs. Bakori sat in their room, thinking of what to do. They had 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. Their oldest daughter Saida is just 22 years old. She had dropped out of the university because their parents couldn't pay for her to continue her studies. Also their second daughter Aziza, who is 20 years old, also dropped out of the university due to school fees. Their last and only son, Akida, is 12 years old. They call him the miracle child because Mr. and Mrs. Bakori didn't plan on having any more kids, but as he was born, being the first and only male child in the family, gave them joy. But now he is lying critically ill from appendix and needs urgent operation. "We need to marry off Saida if we want to save Akida," Mrs. Bakori said in a low voice. Mr. Bakori nodded, seeing they are cornered and they have no other choice. The next day, Mr. Bakori told their first daughter Saida that she is going to marry the rich man that came for her hand in marriage, so that they can use the money to save his younger brother's life. Saida cried the whole day, asking, "Is this how my life will be? I am being sacrificed to save my brother's life." She said she doesn't have any interest in getting married till she is done with school. But also, if she refuses, her only brother Akida may die. 2 days to the day Mr. Juma will come back to pay Mr. and Mrs. Bakori a visit, to get their response. That evening, Mrs. Bakori was still in the hospital with Akida, their son. Aziza, Mr. Bakori's second daughter, came to her father's room. She said, "Father, if Saida married that man, she will die in 6 months." Her father's heart melted as he heard what his daughter Aziza just said. "Why? Why will she die? What do you mean?" he asked, looking very confused. He knew that Aziza carries the spirit of his mother. 2 days before Mr. Bakori's mother died, she blessed Mrs. Bakori, who was pregnant with Aziza, and the next day she died. Immediately she died, Mrs. Bakori gave birth to Aziza, and the whole village knew the result of such passing. It means the mother of Mr. Bakori has returned as their daughter to protect her family. And because of the belief that Aziza carries the spirit of Mr. Bakori's mother, they listen to her whenever she speaks. She acts like a very elderly woman who knows ancient things that are not of her age. She also addresses her father and mother and advises them on certain matters that have worked in their favor since she was born and could speak. "Why did you say she would die?" Mr. Bakori asked, looking very worried. "Because that rich man is not a good man. He has a hidden plan. He has so many evil that he does, but he covers it up with money." The next day, Mr. Bakori sat in his living room, thinking what to do. The doctor called him to say if they don't make payment soon, his son Akida's appendix might burst in his stomach and he would die. As he sat there confused, Aziza came out to meet her father. "I will marry him," she said, her voice steady and firm. Her father turned to her. "You? Why will you marry him? You just said your sister would die in 6 months, so if you marry him will you not also die?" Aziza smiled. "I need to protect my family. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me." Mr. Bakori was trying to think, looking at his daughter who stood there smiling. Immediately there was a knock at the door. Mr. Juma came in. "Have you decided on my offer?" he said, with a slight smile on his face. Yes, I have decided. My second daughter Aziza will marry you." "Oh, that is even better," Juma smiled. "Okay, I will transfer 50 million now for you to start the preparations, and also take care of all that is needed for the wedding. In a week's time, I will come for my bride, and I will transfer 250 million to your account." Mr. Bakori was surprised as the alert hit his phone. He has never seen 50 million in his life. Now he sees 50 million sitting in his account. An extra 250 million will be paid in 1 week's time. As Juma left, Mr. Bakori quickly called his wife who was at the hospital with their son Akida, and sent his wife all the money needed for the medical bills. Later that evening, as his wife came back from the hospital happy and celebrating, Mr. Bakori told her what happened, that Aziza agreed to marry Mr. Juma as Saida refused. She was surprised, knowing the kind of person Aziza was. "What is she up to?" she asked. "I don't know," Mr. Bakori replied, not willing to tell his wife what Aziza said about Mr. Juma to avoid creating fear and panic in his wife's heart. 1 week later, the marriage was done and Mr. Juma took his bride home. Mr. and Mrs. Bakori became one of the wealthiest family in the village, as Mr. Bakori built the biggest furniture business in the village, exporting his furnitures to the city and selling to bigger companies. Saida, his first daughter, went back to school while Akida's operation was successful and he was recovering. As Juma and his new wife Aziza got home, it was a beautiful house in the city, in a very quiet neighborhood. Aziza told Juma, "I need a separate room just for my things and personal time. I will spend the night in your room when you need me to." Juma smiled. "You are a perfect wife," he said as he showed her to her room. As the days progressed, Juma noticed strange things about his new wife Aziza. She barely watched television and barely speaks to the servants in the house. She is always in her room sleeping or sitting alone in their garden. She always sends all the staffs home every weekend and does the cooking by herself. She prepares his meals every weekend and they eat at the dining table. Juma didn't give much thought about his wife's character. His secret brotherhood society forbid them from falling in love. They can only have girlfriends, but any wife they marry would die after 6 months to renew the brotherhood oath for the wealth they have to keep coming. So Juma was also distant from his wife Aziza. 6 months quickly passed and the time came for Juma to use Aziza, his wife, for the sacrifice. He started making preparations for the sacrifice. Part of the sacrifice was to sleep with her after performing a particular rituals in his secret chamber, so that the brotherhood altar will take effect after he has made love to her, and after that, he will take her underwear to his secret chamber which is in one of the rooms in the mansion. The day finally came for the first night to usher his wife to the spirit of the brotherhood after he makes love to her. That weekend, Aziza sent all the workers home as she used to do, and prepared food for her and her husband Juma. As they sat to eat that evening, Juma said, "I will need you in my room tonight. It's been a while." Aziza smiled, "Okay my husband, but you will give me time to go and freshen up after I am done with the dishes." Juma smiled. "You are a good woman," he said. After dinner, Aziza went to her room to freshen up. Juma rushed into his room. From his room he entered the secret door that was inside his wardrobe, which leads to his secret chamber. He went straight to his altar to prepare for the night. He knelt at the altar chanting words. Smoke filled the room as strange sounds were heard all over the room. After that, everything was ready. He came back to his room and laid on the bed, waiting for his wife Aziza. An hour later, Aziza came in, wearing a beautiful nightwear. She laid on the bed and they did the do. The next day, everything looked okay. Juma was very happy that everything went well. He has 3 months to complete the rituals, and in that 3 months, once a month, he must make love to his wife and complete the rituals at his chambers. Then, the Brotherhood power will decide how to take his wife. Maybe she might die or run mad. If she runs mad, Juma will fly her out of the country and put her in a psychiatric ward overseas. But if she dies, it will come in form of an incurable sickness, which her family will be involved to avoid any suspicion. This has been his ways for years, but he didn't know that this time, he is in for a big surprise. 3 months passed quickly and Juma successfully completed his quest to use his wife Aziza for the rituals, but he noticed she was not dying or falling sick or running mad. Instead, Juma was becoming weak day by day. At first, he thought it was a medical issue as he went to the hospital and the doctor said nothing was wrong with him. That was when he knew something was wrong. Juma was getting weaker and his wife Aziza was getting stronger and healthier by the day, and his sacrifice has been completed, according to him. One day, Juma consulted his friend Haji. Haji is a top member at the Brotherhood. "My friend," Juma said, looking weak, "I don't know what is going on with me. I have completed my quest to use my new wife for the sacrifice, but she is well and fine and I am getting weaker by the day. I have been to the doctors, but they said nothing is wrong with me. I am very confused at this time." Haji was quiet for a while, then he said, "You said she is getting stronger and you are getting weaker." "Yes, she is fine. It's been 2 months since I completed the task." Haji thought for a moment. "Did you check her star before you married her?" "No, I did not check. I was to marry her elder sister. It was her own star I checked, but when I got to the father he offered her to me instead of her elder sister, so I was happy thinking since the sister is clean, she also has to be clean." Haji frowned. "You did what? Why will you not go home and check before you marry her?" "That is against our oaths and you know it. What if her star was corrupt? It might be the reason you are having this problem now." Juma's eyes widened in shock, but he managed to find his voice. "Please, can you come to my house to see her? Use your spiritual eyes and check her for me." "Okay, I will come." The next day, Haji visited Juma's house, and Juma came to welcome him outside. He called his wife Aziza and told her to come sit in the living room that his friend has come to visit them. Aziza came and sat in the living room as Juma went out to meet with Haji in the compound. They both came in together. As Haji got into Juma's house, and as he saw Juma's wife Aziza sitting in the living room, he greeted her and said, "Good afternoon, Mama. How are you?" Juma was shocked. "Who are you calling Mama?" "My young little wife," Juma asked, looking confused. Haji whispered to him, "This is not a young woman. This is an elderly woman sitting here." Juma was confused. "What do you mean? This is the wife I just married." "My friend, I think you are in big trouble. I'm leaving this place." He ran out of the house. Juma followed him outside and asked him what is going on. "What do you mean?" Haji, who looked very scared, said, "You are in deep trouble. You need to go and see the chief priest to know what to do because we are only supposed to marry a lady who is younger than us and also has a clean star. What you have there is not a young girl, it's an old woman. That is what my spiritual eyes is seeing." He got into his car and drove off. Juma stood there looking confused. "I married an old woman," he repeated to himself, trying to make sense of Haji's statement. As he stood there in his compound thinking of what to do, his phone rings. It was Haji, who just left his house. His voice came loud on the phone, "Go and see the chief priest or else you will die or go mad in 7 days." Juma's heart raced, beating very fast. He went into the house and saw his wife sitting quietly, smiling. He asked her, "Woman, why have you refused to die?" Aziza laughed. She looked at Juma. "My dear husband, are you expecting me to die? Was that why you married me?" "Oh, my husband, I will not die. You are the one to die because you have slept with an old woman and it has breached your contract with your brotherhood." Juma was shocked. "Which old woman? What are you talking about?" "I bind you in Jesus' name." Aziza laughed. "Why are you bringing Jesus into this? People like you don't know Jesus, you only know demons, and I'm here to teach you a lesson. So you came to kill my elder sister, deceiving us with your money, but I see you are already getting weak. Very soon, you will die or run mad." She started laughing again. Juma got scared and ran out of the house. He went straight to the brotherhood. As he came in, the chief priest shouted, "What have you done? You have gone against the brotherhood laws and tradition. If nothing is done, you will die or run mad." Juma fell to his knees, sweat dripping out of his body. "What did I do, Your Highness? I followed exactly our plans." The priest looked at him and said, "You brought an old woman into your house." Juma replied, "No, I married a young girl. I don't know how she became an old woman, and my chamber didn't warn me when I went to make the sacrifice." The chief priest looked at him with pity. "You never checked if she was clean, you never checked her star. Your wife was born the day her father's mother passed away. So your wife is not an ordinary lady, she carries the spirit of her grandmother. Who you slept with is not a young girl. The night your wife comes to your room, her real body lies in her room. It was the spirit of her grandmother that you have been sleeping with. It might shock you to know that you have never slept with your wife since the day you married her. You have been sleeping with her grandmother. That is why your ritual has no effect on her, and that is why you have grown weaker and she is stronger." Juma's heartbeat could be felt in the room. Sweat filled his body. "What am I going to do? How do I rectify this problem? What do I do to get out of this? But why did my altar not warn me?" he said, tears coming down his eyes. "Your wife came prepared. Every weekend she sends the workers home. She prepares your food, and makes sure that each time you speak to your altar, it will not respond according to the plans. She has been doing this since you married her. That is why." The chief priest continued, "Brother Juma, you have broken the secret oath by sleeping with a woman who is older than you, and also, she is a spirit. It will be difficult to deal with this. You have to find a way to make sure she dies, or else in 7 days you shall die or run mad." "No!" Juma shouted, "I'm not going to die. I will hire assassins to kill her." "You want to hire assassins to kill your wife or the spirit? Tread with care, that woman is very powerful," the chief priest shouted as Juma stormed out of the brotherhood. He went and hired assassins and they came to the house, but they didn't find Aziza there. She was gone. They checked everywhere for her, they couldn't find her. When Juma came home, he found his wife Aziza sitting in the living room, laughing at him. "You sent assassins to kill me. Can you kill a dead woman?" Juma stood there, tears coming down his eyes. "Please, I am sorry," he pleaded. "Don't let me die." Aziza stood up. "This marriage is for better or for worse. I am not going anywhere, my dear husband." She left him there and went to her room. Juma got into his car and drove straight to his wife's village to confront her father, threatening to kill all of them if they didn't come and take back their daughter. "What has our daughter done to you?" Bakori asked, looking confused. Juma stood there, shouting. He did not know how to explain to her parents that he's a ritualist and is about to lose his life because of their daughter. "I'm no longer interested in this marriage. Please call your daughter now. Tell her to leave my house." As he drove back to the city that night, his body became weak. The words of the chief priest echoed in his ears. "You will die or run mad if you don't find a way to kill her in 7 days. It was 3 days left. He went back to the brotherhood. As he got there, he begged the chief priest, "Great one, I know I have made a big mistake. Please don't let me die like this. Come and deal with this woman in my house. There must be something you can do. There is no way that woman can be more powerful than the great brotherhood of wealth." After a while the chief priest said to Juma, "Give us 2 days to prepare a powerful charm that can help you defeat her." 2 days. Juma shouted, "That means I have 1 day left to die or run mad. Please, great one, can it not be tomorrow? We need more than 5 days to consult and come up with the powerful incantations to deal with that woman, so 2 days is just to help you. By the way, I am going out of my way to do this because you broke the laws by not checking her star, so this is all your fault." "Okay, great one." Juma left and checked into a hotel. He got a driver to move him around as his body became too weak to move by himself. 2 days quickly passed. Juma and the chief priest went to Juma's house. As they got there, Juma called all his waiters and house help to meet with him outside. As they came, he told them to leave his house and never come back till he sends for them. He paid them 1 year's salary each. They thanked him and left. But when they got inside the house, Aziza was nowhere to be found. She was gone. They looked for her everywhere but couldn't find her. "Maybe she has gone back to her parents," Juma said, feeling very weak. "If she doesn't die by the end of tomorrow, you might not make it," the chief priest said. Juma's heart sank, tears welling up his eyes. "What did I get myself into?" he muttered in his tiredness. They waited till the next day, which is the last day before Juma's judgment will occur. While they sat in the living room, Aziza, Juma's wife, came back and saw them waiting for her. She started laughing. She turned to the chief priest, "As you have stepped foot into this place, you will die alongside Juma." The chief priest chanted some words. The sound of thunder was heard. Smoke covered Aziza and made it difficult to see what had happened to her. When the smoke cleared, she was standing there looking at them. The chief priest was surprised to see her still standing. He became scared at once. "I have fortified this house for myself. This house and all that Juma owns now belongs to me. I have been fortifying this house as my domain since the first day I stepped foot into this place. How do you think you can defeat me here? From this minute, I will focus on you and your brotherhood, till I kill all of you." Immediately the chief priest went on his knees and started begging her. Juma, who was sitting looking very tired, started crying. "I have no business with you. I have not come for you. I came for Juma, so leave here now." The chief priest ran out of the house. Juma sat on the chair. He was too tired to move. He took out his gun and pointed at Aziza and fired a shot, but the bullet went through her body because she was invincible. Aziza smiled and went into her bedroom. The next morning, Aziza got dressed to go back to the village. She packed all her belongings. After transferring all that Juma had to her name, as his next of kin, she came out with the luggage to leave the house. Juma was still sitting in the living room, tired. He couldn't move his body at all. "I am sorry," Juma said, finding it difficult to speak. "Please forgive me." Aziza turned to him. "I have forgiven you, but for all the souls of the women you've killed, and for all the people you've rendered useless in this town, you have to pay for it. I am not the one taking your life. The only reason you are dying right now is because I refuse that you use my granddaughter for your sacrifice. See you on the other side." Aziza opened the door and left the house. As the sun rose that morning, Juma took his last breath and died. Aziza went back to the village. The richest woman in town had arrived. As she got home, her father called her to his room for them to talk. She explained to him how Juma wanted to use her for rituals. The father was shocked at the news and told her not to say it to anyone else, not his sister or mother. The secret must remain with them. Few days later, the news of Mr. Juma's passing was announced on the television. Aziza and her family mourned the death of her husband and they brought his body to the village and buried him, since nobody from his family showed up to claim his body. One night at Mr. Bakori's house, Aziza laid in bed sleeping. The spirit of her grandmother appeared standing by her bedside. Mr. Bakori saw himself standing in an open field next to his mother. She smiled at him and said, "My work here is done. I have paid you back for all the help you rendered to me. You spent all you had on me, and now you are the richest family in this village. Goodbye, my son. Take care of your family. My job is done." She walked toward the open field and vanished. Mr. Bakori woke up from sleep and ran to Aziza's room and found her sleeping. 2 days after that dream, Aziza started behaving like a child again. She started behaving her age, laughing and playing like a child again. She never had a memory of any husband or anything. It all looked like a dream to her, when they tell her she was once married. Story ends. Moral of the story: every good you do to others has a way of coming back to you, and every evil you do to others will one day locate you. I remain Uncle Sam. Stay safe.